On December 18th of 2023, Governor Greg Abbott traveled to Eagle Pass, Texas to sign 3 bills into law. For months, Eagle Pass has been the site of Republican political theater, with scores of immigration hardliners visiting the city to take President Biden to task over his policy on immigration. Customs and Border Patrol have used this site at Eagle Pass, Texas since 2021, and the city of less than 30,000 has seen tens of thousands of migrants, including women and children, cross through since.
The move comes as data obtained by CBS News shows last week the Border Patrol apprehended nearly 7,900 people each day, up from 6,000 daily in October.
The bills included $1.54 billion of state money dedicated to barrier construction and allows another $40 million to be spent on patrolling Colony Ridge, a housing development near Houston that far-right publications have claimed have been a magnet for illegal immigrants. Additionally, the bills created a state crime for crossing the border illegally and increased the minimum sentence for smuggling immigrants and operating safe houses from 2 years to 10. The laws, combined with deploying the National Guard to assist in border patrol, has set Texas on a collision path with the Biden administration. Then, on January 22nd, the Supreme Court ordered Texas to give Biden administration full access to the border. Abbott balked, issuing a statement on January 24th that read in part, quote, "The federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the United States has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states, including immigration laws on the books right now. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them. And now, right-wing influencers are itching for a second civil war."
We stand now on the precipice of civil war.
Yes. Well, are you seeing that? So on Wikipedia right now, Still Boneless is watching and sent this in. If you go to the Wikipedia article for, they call it the standoff at Eagle Pass. You guys got to pull this up. The standoff at Eagle Pass. They're already describing it on Wikipedia, left-wing platform, as if it's some kind of battle. They're listing the governors on one side. They're listing Biden on the other. And it already says casualties and losses, 3 migrants drowned.
Everyone in chat, if you agree, put a Y. Y in the chat. Light that thing up. Donald Trump needs to go down to the border today or tomorrow. Don't worry about Nevada and South Carolina right now. They're watching too, I promise. The citizens there are very smart. Get to the border right now. Right now.
Often my friends on the left say that immigration, illegal or otherwise, isn't a real issue. That the Biden administration is being unnecessarily cruel and is, quote, just like Trump. But the sheer volume of people trying to enter the country is causing a breakdown within the system. This isn't to say that the problems can't be easily solved, but we must understand what the problems actually are in order to address them. We also must understand the politics of the moment. Misinformation about the issue is rampant, but Cypher report goes beyond the headlines where the facts live and clickbait dies. It's estimated that about 11 million undocumented immigrants currently live within the US. Contrary to the rhetoric on the right, the majority of those immigrants entered the country legally and have simply overstayed their visas. Republican candidates for president have spread the biggest lie about immigration. They claim that as many as 11 million undocumented immigrants have illegally entered the country since Joe Biden took office. Nikki Haley said that only 142,000 people have been expelled. So we put those claims to the test. Here's what we found, according to Pew Research, the Bipartisan Policy Center, and PolitiFact. Nationwide, data up to November of 2023 shows that immigration officials have encountered migrants 8.1 million times under Biden. But the data represents events, not people. About 2.3 million people have been released into the US under Biden's administration. Most of those people are families, according to analysis conducted by the Washington Post. About 356,000 children who have crossed the border alone were also let in. As a reminder, immigrants who have been processed by Border Patrol and released into the United States are in the US legally. As of 2021, DHS estimates that 391,000 people have evaded authorities. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement removed 142,000 people in the fiscal year of 2023. These removals happened after an official court order and can include people who have been living in the U.S. years before the Biden administration. The total number of ICE removals under the Biden administration so far has been about 245,000. But immigration officials also turn people away through returns and expulsions. Returns happen when officials dispatch people to their home countries without legal penalties and without formal removal proceedings. Up through mid-May of 2023, officials also expelled people under Title 42, a public health policy. Title 42 began under Trump administration as a way to mitigate COVID-19 spread. But the real reason that Trump used Title 42 was to greatly increase the number of people expelled at the border. The Biden administration, for their part, recorded about 2.5 million Title 42 expulsions through May of 2023 as well. This means that there have been more than 3.6 million total removals, returns, and expulsions from February of 2021, Biden's first month in office, to September of 2023, based on Department of Homeland Security estimates. Keep in mind that this data represents events and not people. The same person can be expelled multiple times, and each time would count as a separate expulsion, with estimates anywhere between 20 to 40% of repeat expulsions. It should also be noted here that while Title 42, which ended in May of 2023, allowed for immediate expulsion, it did not allow for bans on re-entry into the country. Immigration law now relies on Title 8 authority, which has 5 to 10-year bans on re-entry, along with steep penalties, including prison time for repeat offenders. It is for this reason that many immigration activists say that Biden and Trump aren't much different. The facts that we just laid out here have turned immigration into a key issue for the 2024 election. A recent Harvard Caps Harris poll showed that 35% of respondents listed immigration as their number one issue. Exit polling from the Iowa and New Hampshire primaries showed that it is a top motivating issue for Republicans as well. Meanwhile, President Biden has faced growing calls by members of his own party to do more about the border, as Democratic leaders in New York and Illinois have been forced to deal with the fallout from busloads of migrants being sent to their cities by Texas GOP Governor Greg Abbott.
Upon our interactions thus far, it is becoming increasingly clear that those who want to disrupt our democracy are committed to doing that. It's a real mission of theirs. And so our hope is that we will continue to get more resources and a stronger commitment from the federal government to be able to provide us with the support that the people of Chicago need.
I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City.
This was a truly brilliant political move from Republicans, but that does not mean that it was the correct action. Which brings us to what is happening right now in Congress. As the New York Times reported on January 13th, President Biden and Democrats on Capitol Hill pledged to seriously consider Republican demands for deeply restrictive immigration policies in exchange for billions of dollars in aid for Ukraine and Israel. Activists say that it would devastate America's obligation to welcome desperate migrants fleeing war and oppression. In early December, Republicans blocked a $111 billion emergency spending bill. The Republican legislation included about $50 billion in security assistance to Ukraine and a counteroffer that amounted to a Trump-era wish list for the border. Biden has accused Republicans of holding military aid to Ukraine hostage in exchange for, quote, an extreme Republican partisan agenda on the border. And he's not wrong. And are Republicans willing to compromise on this issue at all? According to reporting from The Intelligencer, it's clear that Joe Biden, House Democrats, and Senate leaders from both parties are motivated to bring talks to a successful conclusion. Democrats are following Biden's lead in offering border concessions to get the supplemental appropriations for key allies unstuck. And Senate Republicans, whether or not they are big supporters of Ukraine, see these border concessions as a unique opportunity to address one of their constituents' top concern. As Mitch McConnell's deputy John Thune told Punchbowl News, Republicans have more leverage now than they'll likely ever have. Quote, there is absolutely no way that we would get the kind of border policy that's being talked about right now with a Republican majority in the Senate. This is a unique moment in time. It's an opportunity to get some really conservative border policies that we haven't been able to get for 40 years. And for his part, McConnell said the following.
Obviously, I think you already know how strongly I feel about the international challenges that we have and our need to address them. I also feel that way about our southern border. We are working hard continuously to try to get a solution on the border part of it. I think this is the ideal time to do it. I think all of you know the politics around here. If this were not divided government, we wouldn't have an opportunity to do anything about the border. In fact, I don't think we'd get 60 votes for any border plan if we had a fully Republican government.
Stern also argued that under a GOP majority and a Republican president, there wouldn't be enough Democrats willing to give Republicans the necessary 60 votes for a border package. And similar efforts failed under Trump last time, partially for this very reason. But House Speaker Mike Johnson either doesn't share the logic or fears his right flank is dead set against any deal with the opposition, particularly in an election year. There are two indicators of Johnson's disposition against a border Ukraine deal, even if Democrats go along, to make it palatable for Republicans. The first is his consistent argument that only something very close to a draconian border bill the House passed on a strict party line vote last May will suffice. In other words, he's looking for surrender, not compromise. But the second sign that this might go nowhere is more recent and dispiriting, as another report from Punchbowl News has suggested. Quote, on a House GOP conference call last week, Johnson said Congress can't solve the crisis at the border until Trump or another Republican is in the White House. It appears that Johnson's position is that he plans to preserve the border crisis as a campaign issue for Trump and his party going into the November general election. During a recent interview on Fox News, Johnson admitted that he is taking his cues on this issue from frequent conversations with the former president. As a result, he may fear that cutting a deal might anger Trump, and he can't risk that. After former President Trump rejected the deal because only he alone can fix it. Beyond that, inaction is always going to be Johnson's first and best option, and any potential compromise with House Republicans on the border is made even less likely by their newest impeachment target, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. On one side of the Capitol, a bipartisan group of senators has engaged in near-daily negotiations with Mayorkas over a landmark border security package. On the other, House Republicans say they want to remove him from office. The chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Representative Mark Green, opened his impeachment hearing by saying, quote, there is no reasonable alternative but to pursue the possibility of impeachment. Impeaching a cabinet secretary is rare. It's only happened once in the nation's history. Going after an official for a policy dispute, in this instance over the claim that Mayorkas is not upholding immigration laws, is unprecedented. Mike Johnson's majority prefers conducting oversight and investigations over pursuing bipartisan legislation to resolve concerns, and Johnson gave his blessing to the impeachment proceedings as well. He called Mayorkas the, quote, leading perpetrator of the border's problems. Quote, Congress is now going to have to take the next step and hold him accountable, Johnson said at a press conference. Committee head Green argued recently that Mayorkas was intentionally removing fewer migrants than Trump did. This echoes baseless and racist conspiracies known as the, quote, Great Replacement Theory. Green claims that Mayorkas is doing this in order to, quote, fundamentally change the population of the United States, and I believe to empower the Democratic Party in perpetuity. Tory Niels, a House Republican from Texas, has been quoted as warning fellow Republicans in both chambers not to assist Biden in racking up a win on the southern border issue during an election year. Quote, let me tell you, I'm not willing to do damn much right now to help a Democrat and to help Joe Biden's approval ratings, end quote. Niels is a member of the House Judiciary Committee's subcommittee on immigration integrity, security, and enforcement. The House Homeland Security Committee plans to hold hearings throughout January with the end goal of impeaching Mayorkas. During a nearly 5-hour session last week, Republicans hammered away at Mayorkas' performance. They said that he failed to do his job detaining migrants who didn't have the right to be in the country and allowed others to remain as they await proceedings. Quote, we're going to impeach him, said Representative Clay Higgins, a Louisiana Republican who is often grandstanding member of the hard right Freedom Caucus. All of this means that foregoing a deal is a win-win for House Republicans, and a majority of them don't want to help Ukraine anyways. We expect this mess to continue into the foreseeable future, despite Mitch McConnell's confidence that a border security deal is on the horizon. In the meantime, extreme measures by Republican-led states like Texas are resulting in death.
Tonight, a woman and 2 children died trying to cross the Rio Grande.
The Associated Press reported earlier this month that Texas fenced off a park along the U.S.-Mexico border and began turning away Border Patrol agents as well. Republican Governor Greg Abbott explained why at a campaign stop near Houston, saying, quote, "We are not allowing Border Patrol on that property anymore." His statement drew applause from supporters as he relayed frustrations over migrants illegally entering the U.S. through the border city of Eagle Pass and federal agents loading them onto buses. Quote, "We said, we've had enough. We're not going to let this happen anymore," Abbott said. Later that night, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security said that 3 migrants, including 2 children, drowned near the park after Texas officials, quote, "physically barred Border Patrol agents from entering." Mexican authorities pulled the bodies, each of them wearing jackets, from the water on the other side of the Rio Grande. The weekend deaths intensified tensions between Texas and the Biden administration. They also unleashed a new round of criticisms from Democrats over Abbott's aggressive actions to curb illegal crossings, accusing the governor of putting migrants at risk, which should be obvious that that is part of the goal. U.S. authorities described the drowning as underscoring the need for Border Patrol agents to have access to the area around Shelby Park, which Texas closed off earlier this week. Quote, "U.S. Border Patrol must have access to the border to enforce our laws," White House spokesman Angelo Hernandez said in a statement. The Texas Military Department released a statement disputing the U.S. government's accounts, calling it, quote, "wholly inaccurate." Quote, "At the time that Border Patrol requested access, the drownings had occurred. Mexican authorities were removing the bodies, and Border Patrol expressed these facts to the TMD personnel on site," the department said. The Biden administration stuck to its initial account Sunday. They said in a letter to Ken Paxton that Texas denied Border Patrol agents access before they knew the migrants had died. In a direct contradiction of Texas's version of events, Homeland Security said agents at the time only knew that migrants were attempting to cross the river. Quote, "Texas has demonstrated that even in the most exigent circumstances, it will not allow Border Patrol agents access to the border to conduct law enforcement and emergency response activities," wrote Jonathan E. Meyer, Homeland Security's general counsel. For their part, Texas officials said Border Patrol agents had requested access to find other migrants who were presumed to have been with those who had died. This is a ridiculous statement coming out of the Texas officials, given the fact that we already know that some of the people were trying to cross the border previously and had died, and we already knew that the Department of Homeland Security had already said that there was issues with rendering aid to those trying to cross the border during extreme circumstances. Continuing on, though, 2 were apprehended by the state military personnel, including one who was transferred to medics with hypothermic conditions. The statement did not say whether Border Patrol agents were allowed in the park, though. According to reporting from the SCOTUS blog and Business Insider, the Supreme Court of the United States granted a request from the Biden administration to allow federal Border Patrol agents to cut or remove wire installed by Texas along a portion of the U.S.-Mexican border. In a brief, unsigned order, the justices lifted an order by a federal appeals court that had barred Border Patrol agents from interfering with the wire except in medical emergencies. But Texas is apparently taking advantage of a loophole in that ruling to keep putting up more razor wire fencing along the Rio Grande riverbank, just daring federal officials to come in and force them to do what has been legally required of them. The ruling did not call for Texas to take any action in the matter, and Governor Abbott said in a post on X that Texas will keep putting up fencing even if federal border agents take it down. Quote, "The razor wire is an effective deterrent against the illegal border crossings encouraged by the Biden's open border policies. We continue to deploy the razor wire to repel illegal immigrations." End quote. Republicans' actions over the last few months have shown where their priorities truly lie when it comes to trying to fix the border. First, they don't actually care about fixing the border. They care about being cruel and trying to do whatever it is that they can in order to make the passage across the border as dangerous as possible, never mind human rights and human dignity. Not only that, it is obvious to anybody paying attention to this whatsoever that Republicans are putting up their 2024 chances of winning the presidency above the needs of their constituents and the needs of the American people. This is evident by how the Republicans are balking at the once in a lifetime or once in a generation border compromise that gives Republicans a lot of what they want. A strict border with the ability for a president, any president, to shut down the border. Shutting down the border in this case means not allowing anybody to be processed at non-legal points of entry when entering the border if a certain threshold of migrants crossing the border is reached or exceeded. But it should be obvious the Republicans want to keep this as a wedge issue going into 2024 and beyond. And we should not let them tell us otherwise. Their actions prove where their priorities lie. Cypher report will be interviewing immigration attorneys, activists, and others to dive deep into the problems plaguing our immigration system, people that are actually responsible, and what can actually fix the issues. Join us to decrypt the world.